Hello and welcome to today's European SharePoint, Office 365 and Azure Community webinar. My name is Laura and I'm delighted to be joined by Andy Malone, who will present the topic, the magnificent 7 Microsoft security and compliance features that you must know. Remember to join in on the conversation about today's webinar and more on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @EuropeanSP and our hashtag is #ESPC23. Don't forget to check out the Resource Centre. This is updated daily with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars and how-to videos. Simply visit sharepointeurope.com and click the Content tab at the top. Continue your learning by joining us for the next webinar, Information Protection in SharePoint, which takes place next Wednesday, the 7th of June from 11 AM to 12 PM CEST. For full details, please check out sharepointeurope.com/register for webinars. We have some great news. There are now a limited number of 3-day European Power Platform Conference tickets available. We have released a very limited number of 3-day European Power Platform Conference tickets, which have been sold out since March. Yes, you heard that right, backed by popular demand, and we expect that they won't last long either. So if you are looking for a deep dive tutorial into Power Platform fundamentals or Power BI, then act fast and secure your 3-day ticket before they sell out again. Please visit sharepoint-europe.com/European-Power-Platform-Conference-Pricing to grab your tickets while they are still available. There is only 3 weeks left until showtime. So after the webinar, we will have a questions and answers session. Type any question that you might have into the questions window. Questions will then be selected and answered at the end of the webinar. This webinar will be recorded and added to the Resource Centre, where you will be notified by email when it is available. And now I'm going to pass you over to today's webinar presenter, Andy. Hello, Andy.
Good morning. Hey, good morning. Right, I will show my screen. Thank you very much, Laura. Okay, so I hope you can all see that. Yes, there we go. So a very good morning to all of you, or good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. I am Andy Malone. I'm going to be delivering this session, the magnificent 7 security and compliance features that you simply must know. And there are a lot of reasons for that, of course. It's a big topic. So it's mostly demos that I'm going to be doing. So who am I? In case you don't know, I'm a Microsoft MVP for 16 years, Microsoft certified trainer 25 years. I also train internal Microsoft personnel, as well as nice people like you. I'm also, of course, well known on YouTube, my YouTube channel, Andy Malone MVP. If you're not subscribed, definitely come and pay us a little visit. All right. So today I want to really kind of talk about there are so many different security features in Microsoft 365, and it's often kind of difficult to know, which one do I go for and which one do I need, which subscription do I need. So what I thought I would do is, subscriptions aside, I just wanted to pick out some of my favorite kind of security and compliance features that are and they're constantly being improved, so that they're really, really good. All right. Now, it's not an exhaustive list, of course. This is just my particular list that I'm going to present within the next hour. As Laura said, if you've got questions or anything like that, then definitely put the questions up there, and we'll take a look at those near the end of the session. All right. So it's really kind of a demo fest. That's really what I'm doing here. So we're currently in 2023, and of course, cybercrime continues to be never-ending. And don't automatically assume, by the way, just because we've got ChatGPT and we've got all this new amazing AI and machine learning technology, that the bad guys don't have it either. Of course they do. So with that, there are going to be a whole new generation of threats that we're going to have to deal with. So of course, out there are a number of different types of cyber threat actors, from hacktivists to cyber criminals, of course, who tend to just be motivated by financial gain. Then you've got the malicious insider. Malicious insiders are, somebody who's really hacked off with the organization. Maybe you've got promoted over them. Maybe you've got the pay rise over them. They've got a chip on their shoulder, and they're going to want to make you pay. And then, of course, we live in a precarious world at the moment. So, there's conflicts in the world, there's political grief in the world. There's always going to be a room for espionage. So nation state actors are particularly strong in this area. But of course, it means that we're all kind of affected as well. So, and what we're actually seeing is we're seeing an evolution in cyber threats. So we're not just talking about traditional files, attachments and things like that. We're seeing fileless malware. Of course, we're seeing a huge increase, especially in the COVID era, of social engineering attacks. I mean, this is just completely mushroomed. So cybercrime is evolving. Now, with that in mind, of course, if you are a Microsoft 365 administrator, or if you're a security professional, then of course it's really important that you keep your skills up to date. So I thought I would talk about some of my favorite kind of top 7 kind of things at the moment that I think you would definitely be interested in. And the first of those is something called verified credentials. Now, verified credentials is essentially the next generation of identity. So this builds on to the likes of Active Directory, or Azure Active Directory, I should say. And what it does is it uses blockchain technology. So blockchain has typically been associated with the likes of Bitcoin. And the idea of it is that there is no one in control, that essentially you are in control of your identity. So you can decide who you want to share your identity with. All right. Now, this has been introduced into Microsoft Azure, and it's actually doing particularly well. So if I just go into my browser here, hopefully you can see that. Let me just check. So if I come in here, I just want to make sure you can see that. Yes. So here we can see I've got a website here, and it's called Woodgrove Bank. Let me just come out of that presentation and go in here so you can see. So I've got this presentation. I'm currently in, I've got this company here called Woodgrove Bank. Now, Woodgrove Bank use a new identity system called Verified ID. Now, Verified ID, you can come basically into Microsoft 365 if you go into Azure Active Directory. And in Azure Active Directory here, we have something Microsoft love renaming things, don't they? So we know that anything to do with identity is essentially called Microsoft Entra. So Microsoft Entra consists of 3 tools. One is Azure Active Directory. The other one is they purchased CloudKnox a couple of years ago. So this is permissions management. And of course, here we have Verified ID. Now, Verified ID is perfect if you deploy your own apps and you've got your own tools and you want to incorporate Verified ID into your organization. So just a quick demo here of how this works. So I take the role that I'm joining the Woodgrove Bank, and you can see I fill in my details, I click on next, and it then says to me, okay, you need to verify using the True Identity website. So what is true? What does this mean? So essentially, the concept of verified credentials means that you register all of your personal information with a trusted authority. Now, this trusted authority, for example, might be a government issued authority like a passport or something like that. So you know that everything's coming from a trusted source. So assuming that I've uploaded all my personal information with this trusted source, it's now asking me to verify my identity. So I'm going to go to the trusted identity, and you can see it says, okay, let's take a selfie of Andy, and it then does a facial recognition, and it then prompts me to upload my government issued ID. So this could be a passport or something like that. So now that I've updated that, I'm going to just verify that information. So up I go, yep, it says, yep, you are who you say you are. And now what it does is it generates a QR code and a PIN number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my camera and I'm going to have a look at that QR code, open this up, and you can see it's now prompting me for my multi-factor authentication, and it's asking me for that PIN number. So I'm just going to type that PIN number in. All right, so, okay. And now, if you look at the camera, there I am, you can see it's now issued me with a true identity card. All right, so this is my DID or digital ID. All right, so I'm now going to add that to my wallet. So when I click on add to wallet, you can see that that has now been added to my wallet. Okay, so just confirm that. Yes, okay. So I have now got my digital ID. So just like a credit card, this has gone into your digital ID for your wallet on your phone. So now that I've done that, I'm going to return back to Woodgrove, and it says, okay, you've now got your identity card, and I now want to access my employee portal. Now, your employee portal, of course, will also have probably an employee card. So again, it asks me for a QR code. I verify, and it now says to me, hey, do you wish to share your verified ID with Woodgrove Bank, with your employer? So you're in control of your identity, and you can withdraw this anytime, by the way. So I'm going to say, yes, I want to share this. And you can now see it says, yeah, I want to continue onboarding. So I have now got I want to now retrieve my workplace credentials, okay? So I'm going to retrieve my workplace credentials. And again, I just follow the simple instructions on screen, okay? And I confirm with a PIN. And I'm now adding my Woodgrove identity to my digital wallet. Okay, so I've now added my Woodgrove ID to my digital wallet. So that's me fully onboarded. So what can I do with this digital ID? Well, as you can see, it's now saying, okay, do you want to order your equipment? So if I was taking a flight, I could use my digital ID instead of a passport because it's all been verified. If I'm purchasing a piece of equipment here and maybe the company here has an ongoing deal that they'll give me a discount if I work for Woodgrove Bank. So I want to access my discount, and it's saying, okay, do you want to log in with your details or verify your employee credentials? So I am going to verify my employee credentials. So again, and it now says, hey, do you want to share your employee ID with the company in order to get your discount? I'm saying, yes, I do. And the clever thing about this is it shares only the basics. So I can click on to the card here, and you can see that it gives me a full details of everyone that I've shared my digital ID with. Okay, so isn't that cool? Such a cool powerful feature. And we're now starting to see this kind of really grow. And I think this is going to be such a big area in the future. So really in the future, you won't need to carry a wallet load of different ID papers and passports and credit, credit things, credit checks. You just present your digital ID and it will confirm your identity instantly. So very, very exciting where this is going to be going. Okay, so let's go back to the demo. So there we go. So like I said, it requests proof of claims, it verifies a satisfaction of requirement, and it approves the request via your wallet. So you are in control. And then finally, it obviously grants digital signed credentials to the actual user. And you can see here, it's easy to use, so you can have your personal ID, you've got your government issued IDs, very, very easy to use and very easy to secure. And you can see it's convenient at the far right-hand side because you can see every transaction and you're in control. You can decide to stop sharing with a particular vendor, for example. All right, so digital ID, how cool is that? Number 6, I really like this one. Number 6 is something called an information barrier. So if you can imagine that you're, well, in the old days when we used to have things like Active Directory, if you were a very large bank, let's say you were an investment bank, and you maybe had a separate domain for investment bankers, and then you maybe had another domain for financial advisors. If you have to do that in a single organization, so for example, within Azure Active Directory, it was quite difficult to do that at the beginning. But now we have something called information barriers. And the concept of an information barrier is it's exactly that. It blocks all communication for ethical reasons between two segments within your organization. So for example, in this example, you can see that the HR team, they basically need to talk to everybody, but investment bankers should not be able to communicate with financial advisors. Okay, so just oops, sorry, just come back. Let me just come back and I will show you this. So if I go back into my web page, and I'm going to come into my Microsoft 365 Admin Center, I'm going to come down here into compliance. And here in the compliance on Microsoft Purview, as we know, I am going to come down and we have got something here called information barriers. So where are you? Blind as a bat, you know. Yeah, there we go. So information barriers. So basically, I'm going to come into information barriers here. You get details about it. But the first is really, really simple to do, actually. So the first thing that you do is you basically create two segments. So in essence, when you create a segment, so I can say HR, I'll say next, and I can say, do I want to add a group or a department or whatever it might be, okay? So once I've added that department in, let me just close that because I've already done that. So if I, let's say, select this one and let's say edit this. So I basically bring in this department and I'll say, okay, if this equals CPH, so if the department equals CPH and sales, okay, that's the segment. So Copenhagen sales, and I'm going to say, yeah, I can say, yeah, next, and submit, and that's it. So all I've done is I've just created two of those. So I've got Copenhagen finance and Oslo sales, just as an example. So I've created my two segments. So now I simply go into policies, and here's one I made earlier. Again, I'm just going to edit this policy, and I've called it my ethical policy. So I click next, and I'm saying, it says choose a segment. So you click on the drop down arrow, choose one of the segments. So the first one is CPH Finance. Next, and then it says allow or block communication between Oslo sales. So I've just choose blocked between Oslo sales. And what this does, ladies and gentlemen, it completely blocks all communications. So Teams, chats, emails, everything between these two segments, all right, for ethical reasons. So I'm going to click next. Do you want to enable your policy? I do. And then I'm going to submit that policy. So once you've submitted your policy, I'll just click done. And then finally, it says policy application, apply policies. Now this is already on, so I don't need to do that. Okay, and that's essentially all you need to do with the information barriers. It's really super simple, but such a powerful feature. Okay. My number 5 is conditional access. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, yes, Andy, I know conditional access, but you'd be surprised. This is a technology that is constantly evolving, constantly changing. So we're going to talk about some of the new features. Now, just to kind of give you a bit of background, conditional access essentially adds on to traditional authentication. So traditional authentication was basically just a username and password. Once you've satisfied that, you're in the building. Yeah. Now, what this does is it looks at additional signals. So, for example, are you trying to open a particular app on a particular device in a particular location? Based on those signals, it will either allow, disallow, require more information, and so on, and then it will enforce those policies. Okay. So looking at some of the conditional access and some of those new features, so let me just come back here. I'll just scroll back up here, and I'll go back into Azure Active Directory here. And in Azure AD, I'm going to come down into Protect and Secure. And I'm going to go, first of all, you know, in order to understand conditional access, you need to also understand identity protection as well. So identity protection is a P2. So if you've got an Azure AD P2 license, this is awesome. So just quickly mention this. So essentially, identity protection, what this does is it protects your most sensitive user accounts. It adds an additional layer of security. So for example, this is my management team, let's say, and I've set my management team at a high priority, and I'm basically saying any unusual sign-ins, any unusual behavior, I basically want to block access. So if somebody's trying to come in with a dodgy password, block access. Then you've got the sign-in risk policy. So what are the risks involved with signing in this user? Again, I've created a bucket, and I've called that bucket that's high, you know, this is my high profile users, same users, but this time I've said it requires multi-factor authentication. So if they're signing in remotely, for example, I'm going to say, okay, if you're a risky user, I want multi-factor authentication. And when you look at that, you think, yeah, okay, that's nice. It's a nice feature. Can it be better than that? Yes, it can. So when you compare this to the likes of conditional, or when you add this on rather to conditional access, I think you get the full power of this tool. So again, just a little bit of background information just before I begin. So conditional access, you can create either manually, so you can create a manual policy, or you can create a policy based on a template. And again, there are an increasing number of templates in different categories now. So ranging from device templates such as in Zero Trust to things like protecting sensitive administrator accounts. Okay. Just a couple of things you might want to do before you roll out conditional access. You can set up your own terms of use, so terms and conditions. You can also create your own named or secure locations. So it can be based on a location or on an IP address range, okay? Or multi-factor authenticated trusted IPs, for example, people that work at home, for example. And what this does, these trusted, you can basically say, okay, if you're in the Manchester office today or the Dublin office tomorrow, when you're in the office, you don't need to do MFA. Simple. All right. So it's location aware, which is really nice. So what's new? So once you've set that up, another thing that's quite new is I've mentioned MFA, and I always thought, you know, it would be kind of cool to manage your own MFA. And here in 365, or in Azure rather, we have these authentication methods. And the authentication methods, you can choose whether you're going to have passkeys or FIDO keys. Passkeys is the new name, of course. You've got Authenticator app, you've got SMS messages, you can issue a temporary access pass for new employees, you can do voice call, email, one-time passcode, and things like that. So, and you know, you might think, hey, it would be quite useful to be able to kind of customize MFA. And can I do that? Now you can. So we have something called authentication strengths, and this is kind of new. So you can go in and you can create your own authentication strength. So for example, if I call this, I work in Oslo a lot, so I'll just call this my Oslo authentication strength. Okay, oops, if I could spell it correctly. Okay, and I can put in a little description here, and you can see here, you can customize these. So I'm going to say I want to choose phishing resistant MFA. I'm going to choose passwordless. Let's say you might use Windows machines for passwordless authentication. And then you can choose multi-factor authentication. So you might not want things like passwords included. So you might take the passwords out, for example. Yes. So you see what I mean? So you can customize which options you want to have. Are you going to support single factor authentication? So that might be okay if you're choosing, let's say, certificates. All right. So you can create and customize your own authentication strengths. Okay. You get a little review of it here. Okay. And then I'm just going to click next and I'm going to confirm it. All right, so there you have it. I have now created my own authentication strength. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into policies. I'm going to create a new policy and we'll call this my Oslo sales CA policy. Okay. And it can be for users or groups. So these are the signals. So I'm going to say, is it for all users or just selected users? You can also do it for directory roles. So for, you know, certain admin roles or users in groups. It can be for guests. So if you've got guests coming in, they'll need to meet these requirements. I'm going to do this for users and groups. And I'm going to say, bring in Oslo. And I'm going to say, in fact, I'll say sales. Let's bring one in for sales. Okay, I'm going to bring it in for the sales team. Okay, because my sales team is in Oslo. Okay, so this is for my sales team. And I'm going to say the next signal, okay, if they're using a particular app or all cloud apps, and you can also choose user actions as well. So based on a user actions or authentication context is, let's say, you know, the authentication is based on sensitive information or something like that. Well, for this demo, rather than choosing specific apps, I'm just going to say all cloud apps. All right. And I'm then going to say all cloud apps, you have to meet these conditions. The user risk, remember this? So I'm going to say yes. I'm going to choose high and medium risk. I'm going to say sign-in risk, the same again. Okay. And that's where it really shows the power of identity protection, I think. And now you can choose device platforms. So I can say, yeah, I want to include any device or exclude any device here. So for example, I might say, yes, I want to exclude Windows Phone, for example, or Linux or whatever. Yes, so you can include or exclude any device. And I can say locations. Now remember what I said about MFA. So I could say, yeah, I want to configure this, but I want to exclude trusted locations. Okay. All right. Client apps. Now client apps I'm going to configure. So am I going to allow browser apps and also mobile apps or desktop? But then what about what we call legacy apps? Now, to be honest, these are really dangerous because legacy apps, you can get away without multi-factor authentication, and potentially this could be a real backdoor into your organization. So definitely think about switching those off. Okay. And this, I really like this. This is filter for devices. So this is using dynamic rules. So think about it, you could actually filter for devices here. So I could say, okay, manufacturer, let's say equals, let's say Dell, okay? And I could say if the manufacturer, or I could say, actually, let's go for this one. I could say the model, let's say, contains XPS. Get the idea? So, and you can even do it with a device ID. So basically, you could say only these devices can come onto my network. How cool is that? So it's extremely granular, this. All right. Okay, so they're my signals. They need to meet these conditions. And based on those conditions or signals, I'm now going to grant access, but do I require multi-factor authentication? Now, if I click onto that, you'll notice that authentication strengths is not available. But if I deselect that, I can now choose my own authentication strength and check it out. There's my Oslo authentication strength. All right. And you can see require the device to be marked as compliant. You've got these other rules here that you can do as well. And you can either require multiple options or just one of them. So I'm going to click on select. And finally, the last thing that you want to switch on or control is the session. So you can control things like, you know, when you log on and it says, do you want to keep logged in, or do you want to force log out and things like that? So you can force it, you can set a sign-in frequency. So it's forcing the user to sign in every 7 days. Persistent browser, do you want the browser always persistent? So that means that the user can come in like tomorrow and just open a browser and continue, or not. So for example, if you're in a bank, for example, you might not want to be persistent. Then you've got things like require token authentication for sign-in sessions. So again, or token protection. So again, this is a new service. It's currently in preview. So again, you can check out that. So I'm going to just accept that. And right now, I'm going to deploy this policy in reporting only mode. So that is, it's just a kind of try before you buy mode. So I'm going to say, yeah, that's fine. I have now created my policy. And just to show you, by the way, when users sign in, so if I just come in and just say show more, and if I come down to reporting, so if I come into just collapse this down here. And if I come into monitoring and health, you've got the sign-in logs in Azure. Of course, very, very important. And if I click into a sign-in log here, you can see it shows the user, who they're signing in as, where they're coming in from, what device they're using, what browser, how they're authenticating, is conditional access hitting them, and also is conditional access hitting them in reporting only mode. Get the idea? So there you go. Conditional access and some of the new features. Super cool and extremely powerful. All right. Right, my number 4 is something called communications compliance. And communications compliance, you know, it's a bit of a controversial topic, actually. So basically, communications compliance in this, I suppose, politically correct world that we live in nowadays, essentially what this is looking for, it's basically filtering all communications. So everything that you say, everything that you type, everything that you do is basically filtering, and you can set it, you can set flags. So for example, inappropriate language, inappropriate behavior, things like sexual innuendos, graphic pictures, you know, behavior that shouldn't be, you know, should be frowned on. Let's put it like that. So let me show you this. So I'm going to just flip over here, just close that down there. So I'm going to come back into Purview, and I'm going to come into communications compliance. Okay. Now, just to remind you, if you've got any questions, stick them in the chat, and I'll spend a few minutes at the end of the session. And so if you want to ask any questions, go ahead. All right, so here I am in communications compliance, and I am going to come in, first of all, you get some general information here, and it makes some kind of recommendations, and it's showing me you know, how much data has got full names, how many addresses, you know, medical records, sensitive information, and things like that. So first up then, I'm going to go into policies. And the first thing we're going to do is you're going to create a policy. And you can create a policy based on inappropriate text, images, graphic images, sensitive information types, regulatory compliance, and so on. To be honest, though, it doesn't really matter which one you click on because everything can be customized. So here is the template. You can see, and it's about this template. You see, it's called inappropriate text. It's currently targeting all users. And again, I can put in a reviewer here. So I can say mod administrator, or is it actually CDX, this one? Okay, bring in this user, yeah. So this could be, for example, a HR person or somebody like that within the organization. Now, I'd like to point out this, that although it's filtering, yes, it's only looking for these flags, right? So if you're not, if you're behaving in a correct way and you're not saying anything untoward, or using foul language or sending inappropriate images, you've got nothing to worry about, by the way. Common question, Andy, can I customize this? Absolutely you can. So I can go here, you've got some other options here. So I'm gonna go ahead, I can say, yeah, I want to customize this. And again, this is, you've also got something called an adaptive scope. So this is where you could use dynamic rules and say, okay, all, you know, everybody in the sales department in Oslo, it will affect them. So you can use, you can create these dynamic scopes if you want to. You can also exclude certain users and groups. You can see Exchange, Teams, Yammer, it's covering all of those. And it's monitoring 100% inbound, outbound, and internal communications. And you can see it's monitoring these things called trainable classifiers. So targeted harassment, a threat, discrimination. So you can see, I mean, it's, you know, it's fairly easy to use. And you can also add in other things as well. So things like profanity, or let's say, what else have we got? Yeah, inappropriate images, adult images, racy images, gory images, suspected money laundering, suspected stock manipulation. Get the idea? So you can customize any of these. OCR to extract text from images. So if somebody's got sending inappropriate photos or images and it's got text on it, and you can see you can control the percentage of communications that you want to monitor. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to click next, and I'm now going to go ahead and create that policy. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is communications compliance. Now, if there are any hits against that policy, it will generate an alert, and based on that alert, you can then pull off a report and investigate. Okay, extremely powerful. Definitely check it out. It's called communications compliance. All right, now number three is number three is called entitlement management. I love this. So this is not new. This has been out for a little while, but it's amazing how many people don't know about this. So what entitlement management does is it basically allows you to create packages of resources and assign them to teams or groups of people and also guests. For example, if you're working on a project or something like that. And again, the only thing about this, I would say, is it's in a weird place. So if you go into Azure Active Directory, it's in Azure Active Directory, and it comes under identity governance, and it's called entitlement management. I always felt that this would be more suited in the Microsoft 365 admin center. Maybe one day actually will come in, but for me, I think it would be a better feature there. Anyway, it works like this. So the first thing that I do is I create a catalog of resources. Now, there is a general catalog, but I'm going to create my own, and I'm going to call this the Oslo project. Okay, I'm going to call this the Oslo project. I'll just copy that. And I'm going to say it's enabled, and it's enabled for guests and external users as well. And I'm going to go into the Oslo project, and I'm going to click on to resources. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to add some resources to the catalog, right? So you can't create a package of resources until you create the catalog. So the catalog can contain groups and teams, applications, and SharePoint sites. So I'm going to choose, let's say, what have we got here? Project Falcon. I'll bring in sales planning, the sales team. I will bring in, what else have we got? Yeah, I'll just bring in a few examples. Sterling sales, there we go. So I've added a few teams in. I'll bring in some applications. So for example, if I want to bring in Zoom or a VPN server, again, these are just examples. LinkedIn, there we go. I can bring, what else have we got? Yeah, I'll just bring in those apps in. And then finally, I'll bring in some websites. So sales, so I'll bring in those. Sterling sales. Okay, so I've now created a catalog of resources. Okay, so now that I've created the catalog, I can now create, all right, one's there already. I can now create an access package. So to create an access package, I simply click on access packages. I'm going to call this my Oslo access package. Okay. And I will just copy that again and say, yeah. And now it says, okay, you need to choose from the resources that you just created. So, and you can see, I can say, yeah, this one is for sterling sales. I want them to use Zoom and LinkedIn, and the SharePoint sites, sterling sales and global sales. So it's allowing me to choose from the resources from the catalog. And now I can choose the role. So again, I'm just going to say a member for the team. And again, for the app, you can choose the type of access. Again, this may change depending on the app, of course. So I'm going to say visitors for the websites. So you see what I mean? You basically add the resources, okay? And now I'll say, okay, who do you want to be able to request? So is it for users in my directory, users, external users such as guests, or none? Okay, so I'm going to say, who is this for? Is it for specific users and groups, all members, including guests? And I'm going to say, does it require approval? Excuse the birds flying around here. Does it require approval? So I'm going to say, no, it doesn't require approval. But you see what I mean? You could have different levels of approval before access is granted. Do I want to enable new requests? Yes. And do I want to add in specific issuer, who's the issuer? So no, I'm fine with that. So now I'm going to say, okay, the requester information. So I'm going to say, why do you require access? Okay, why do you require access? And I'm going to say, I would like a long text answer. So I'll just say yes. And how long do you want to gain access for? So I could say 30 days. And I'm going to say, does it require an access review? It's only 30 days, so I'm going to say no. And again, there's some custom options that I can put in here, but I'm just going to say review, and I'm going to say create. Okay, so off it goes, and it goes ahead, and it now creates the access package. I can now copy the link to the access package, and you can now see I've now got access to the access package. Okay, so I can go into why do you need access? And I would then have access to those resources. How cool is that? That is a really useful feature, isn't it? That, my friends, is called an access package, which comes under entitlement management. Now, we're talking about applications, and I'm sure that you've seen these. These are called permissions requests, okay, or OAuth permissions. And normally, users will just go into an app and download the app, and it will come up with something like this. And the user will just go, yes, 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 and they won't even read it. So a common question is, Andy, can I manage user consent? So yes, you can manage user consent. So I'll just show more here. And I'm just going to go into enterprise applications. And very important, there's this area here called consent and permissions. So this is where you can say, I'm going to allow my users to consent to everything, or just only to specific apps, or don't allow my users to consent. In other words, users would need admin approval before they install any third-party apps. And you can also do the same thing for groups here as well. Such an important feature, by the way. You can also customize the individual settings as well. So definitely take a look at this, because this is really, really super important. Okay, so that's user consent, and this is specifically to control OAuth permissions. Okay. Finally, I come to my number one, and my number one is really nice actually. This is actually Microsoft Teams. Again, it's been out a few months now. This is called Enhanced Encryption Policies, and essentially it's your way of generating end-to-end encryption in phone calls. Now, if I just, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close that there. I'm going to come back to this, and I'm going to go and open up the Microsoft Teams Admin Center. And the Teams Admin Center here, I'm just going to come in and I'm going to say, okay, here in the Teams Admin Center, we have this option here, Enhanced Encryption. And you've got a number of default policies. So if I just add in one of these, and you can see end-to-end encryption, and it says not enabled, but users can enable. Now, just a word of warning, when if a user enables, they're making a Teams call, they can do end-to-end encryption, but you can't record the call. You can't get a written digest of the call either. If you have Teams Premium, then you can also enable it for meetings as well. So again, if sensitivity, confidentiality is important, then this is a super important feature, all right? Now, if you want to record calls or record meetings, then it would need to be off. So you obviously don't encrypt the call for that. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, my number one, end-to-end encryption. Now, obviously, easy to switch on. You can enable this through the UI, and you can also switch this on via PowerShell as well. So definitely check out that. Now, of course, you don't think I'm just going to leave you on that, do you? So one more thing, my favorite number one is insider risk management. Again, insider risk management is such an important tool to detect potential insiders. Now, I'm not saying that you're a potential insider, but let's face it, with the concept of zero trust, anyone is a potential insider. So for this, we go into Microsoft Purview and we go into insider risk management here. And just wait for this to come in. And again, the first thing that we do is you create a policy. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a policy here. So I'm going to get started. And it says, okay, what kind of policy? Again, there are a number of templates. So you can choose a policy template. Just wait for this to come in. And this policy templates, you know, data theft by departing users, data leaks, security policy violations, health record misuse. And this is not accusing anyone of anything. This is just a precaution. And if you've got a HR connector, it will integrate with that. And you can see, I can say, right, next. I'll call this my Oslo levers policy, and I'll say next, and I'm going to include all users and groups. So you can see, do you want to prioritize any content? I'm not going to bother with that just now, but you could. Choose a triggering. So when the account is deleted from AD, it will monitor them for 30 days after they leave and up to 90 days before they leave. Okay, so 90 days before and 30 days after, it's looking for unusual behavior. All right, so you can see all of these are ticked. So basically people accessing content, maybe device. I've not got any devices at the moment, but anybody who's copying content to devices, things like inappropriate access to websites, phishing websites, downloading malicious code, things like that. All right, so you can see here, yeah, so things like that. And again, all of this can be customized. Again, I'm just going to accept the default settings here, and I'm going to submit that. Now, so that is monitoring all user accounts. Okay, so now what happens, just click on OK. If a policy hits, an alert will be risen. It will generate a case. You can also collect forensic evidence as well. Now this will come in, it just takes a few minutes just to appear, by the way. The UI is just a little bit sluggish. There you go. And again, you can generate reports from all of this as well. Okay. If you want to see a full demo on this, I did one recently on my YouTube channel, so definitely go ahead and check that out. All right, so insider risk management, absolutely brilliant. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Verified IDs, information barriers, conditional access, Microsoft Purview communications compliance, entitlement management, managing user consent, and Teams encryption policies, and insider risk management. All right, so with that, I am going to come back over here, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen at the moment. All right, and do you have any questions? So I think, Laura, you're monitoring that, is that right?
Yes, Andy. Just very quickly before we get into the questions, just wanted to say a big thank you, Andy, for great demos and a great presentation.
Oh, you're
So
welcome.
I'll just get straight into the questions now. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them into the questions window and we can get to them then at the end. So the first question I have in here, someone is asking, is this for English specific or are other languages supported as well? And that's referring to communication compliance.
Okay, yeah, so with communications compliance, yes, many of the languages have been localized, but you can also go into the trainable classifiers in Microsoft Purview, and you can also add your own as well.
Brilliant, thanks, Andy. Another question then, someone wants to know, what are the licensing requirements for entitlement management?
I believe you need a P1 license for it. I'm not a licensing guru, but I'm sure it's a premium license anyway.
Brilliant, thanks, Andy. So another question then, someone is asking, is it safe to assume that entitlement management and access packages are the same thing? And also, how can we assess packages for on-premise applications, Azure Ad Proxy perhaps?
Yeah, they're the same thing, first of all. Yes, if you're using Azure App Proxy, basically the app appears as if it's just a regular application in Azure. So as long as it appears in Azure in the enterprise applications list, which it will, you can then add it to an access package. So yes, you can.
Brilliant. So another question then, someone wants to know, with access packages, can you specify specific roles within an application? For example, security reader in SuccessFactors.
Ooh. Not in the UI, no. Yes, you can. Yes, roles. Well, I know that within the application, it depends on the application. So remember when I was choosing the applications from the catalog, the different settings were in the list. So it depends on the application. You can choose the different application roles if they're in the list for the application. It depends on the application itself, to be honest.
Great, thanks, Andy. So another question then, someone wants to know, so block the team's communication between two departments using information barrier who are
Yeah.
already in communication.
Yes. Yes. So if you, as soon as you set up an information barrier between two groups or two groups of people or two teams or whatever it is, it will immediately block all communications. This includes email, chat, Teams, everything. Okay.
Brilliant. So that is all the questions we have in there today. So that concludes our Q&A session. And on behalf of the ESPC community, I just want to extend another thank you again to you, Andy, for taking the time today to carry out this webinar. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And if you're going to the European SharePoint conference later in the year, I'm going to be speaking there. So it will be great to meet you all in person. So.
Absolutely. And we're very excited to have you speak, Andy.
Yeah, great. Super.
So
really
that is
appreciate
the end of today's
it.
webinar.
All right,
You can
fantastic.
find this webinar and more at sharepointeurope.com/resource center. That is it for today, folks. Thanks again to all you for joining. Take care, and we hope that you'll join us again for more learning. Bye for now.